Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get pre-orders of all the upcoming Force of Will sets, as well as releases of previous sets after they come out. TCGprime.com, with over 100,000 Force of Will singles, as well as out-of-print boxes from the past, and TCG accessories, as well as FoulLibrary.com, a wonderful resource for deck lists, article discussions, and more. Check them out at FoulLibrary.com, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer member Vite Ramen. Thank you for your support. Class is in session. Hey there, rulers. DMO73 here, bringing you the deck profile for Order Killer, Carlina Astema, designed to have a very, very good matchup against Order decks, and except that we're going to be playing grind games against everything else. So far this deck's had pretty good success. It's definitely something that I would be tooling around with if I was trying to dig into competitiveness, and I wanted to be able to kind of really put the squeeze on the orders. The whole idea is we're using Carlina particularly just to have more responses in the early game, more punishes in the early game to answer whatever order decks are trying to play, especially when they do order. And then Astema is designed to be your draw engine. It's designed to keep your hand filled and really help you stick to that grind and keep and prevent yourself from just getting outvalued. So yeah, that's the kind of core idea of the deck. It functions very, very well. It is very, very similar in a feel to the Olivia 1-2 punch deck, where you're just trying to wait until your opponent does something, punish it, capitalize on it, punish it, capitalize on it. As your very little of your actions are being taken without pretty good defense, or unless it's trying to push through for lethal. Astema's Judgment is a huge part of this deck, being able to, even if you just do it early, because we have stand in the sideboard, doing it early so you have this kind of sitting on draw 2 every time you kill something is really, really huge. And then Carlina almost never flips, but sometimes it helps. It helps to be able to answer a Garion, which is nice because she can trade with Garys. So that's a thing. Stone base wise, we're playing 4 Stone of the 6th Sage, 1 Ragnarok's Fiery Stone, 3 Stone of Knowledge, and 2 Erythropia. This is just to be able to recharge God's Arts if needed, particularly for Virgil, but sometimes you want that second God's Art to grab your second Inferno. Magic Stone of Knowledge is just great. Ragnarok's Fiery Stone. We play this because, we usually call stone the first stone with the Astema. So if our first stone is Ragnarok's, then we still have 2 will to be able to play, and that's usually enough to be able to punish the order deck still. And then we just don't have to worry about tapping to call stone later, which is huge. And then 4 Stone of the 6th Sage. This deck actually doesn't really abuse this nearly as much in terms of floating the extra will. It mainly, the times that I use it is to float red-black to Judgment's Astema easily, or to play a Magic Stone Research Institute. There are a few times where I will play a Garion super early against order decks, but usually not. Again, just to be safe, right? If I'm going on the draw, so I have the coin and I hit this turn 1 against an order deck, then I'll try to push for a turn 1 Gary, because at least I have the coin to be able to back it up. But ultimately, we're not actually really abusing this stone very much, other than just being able to have the 5-color access, which is also kind of mitigated by Carlina. So just some stuff for you to note there. So going into the deck, we're playing a single copy of Charlotte's so that we have a way to turn off Astema. 3 copies of number 13 Anti-Magic. It's still a good card, even if we can't use it to stop. We definitely don't use it as much as we used to because of orders, but it is still a good card for the non-order matchups. 2 Magic Stone Research Institute, because the ability to call 2 stones on turn 1 is silly. And it also just helps us in the grind game because we don't put too many resonators out on board. 2 copies of Inferno, so that we have a backup one in case one of them gets discarded or we have to use it too soon. 4 copies of Gradius, because this card is insane against order decks. It just does a lot of work for just 1 will, which is great. 3 copies of Virgil, so we have an actual threat in the main deck outside of, trying to slam a Garion. 3 Witch of the Fallen Kingdom, because it's just a good card that helps. It can be used as a punish against the Kaguya decks, like they go to call stone. And then you're like, well, or they go to do War It Shall Be, and you go, well, in response, which of the Fallen Kingdom? So then they, don't get to do the search. So it provides good enough value, and it's a body on board to chip through. Now, we were playing 4 Silmeria Dance of Spirits because it's insane against order decks. The idea, like against Nyarlathotep, you go, well, in response to your enter trigger off of your Isis Dance of Spirits, or, in response to your Red Wine and Bread Dance of Spirits, so that you turn it off for the turn, stuff like that. Ultimately, we went down to 3 because 4 felt too much and didn't do enough in the other matchups, so we went down. Also consider the idea of playing Battle Comes to an End and then instead for a more proactive play, but it is shifting the pace of the deck a little bit. 2 copies of Mermaid of the Despairing Voice. This is really nice because it helps answers Virgils, it helps answers a lot of 3-drop resonators are a thing, so being able to you can also hit additions, so this can be used to stop the null part, never mind. It's helpful to bounce the resonator part. Save your own things, get rid of a 3-drop, helps answer a Virgil in the early game because we don't have too much to deal with that kind of stuff. 4 copies of Garion. It's a Carlina deck. It's going to have 4 copies. 2 copies of Pharesia, Lady and Anorectia. This card is really, really, really good. It's like an incidental tap Carlina, get a 2-drop. 6/7 stat line is great. Free barrier is great, and it gives us more ways to be able to do Pharesia things or do actions without having to use our 1 spell per turn, which is huge. 4 Fallen Angel of Black Tears because it's insane. It hits J rulers, and with Astema, it's potentially a pay 1 black, kill a thing, draw 3 off of Astema, but even just by itself, it's usually a pay 1 black, kill a thing, draw 2, which is still insane for value. Couple copies of Demons of Explosions just because it's another way to be able to deal with J rulers, as well as having us some reach. 2 copies of Cassius Excalibur, the First Boon. This is not in the initial list. It is still very in flux. The reason why it's in here is this idea of, once again, incidental value, where if we didn't have to use Carlina, we can cast this and draw 3. The problem is that those cards RFG'd, if they have our discard stuff, we can't discard them from the RFG, so it's kind of a trade-off. I'm tooling around with it. It wasn't in the original list. The original list was playing, I don't remember what was in place of this. Oh yeah, a castle. It was a Castle of Carlina, and then the 4th copy of Silmeria. So it's been working out so far. I'm not sold on it yet. It's just more ways to keep the hand value good. It's also really good in the matches where we have to go to stand, because then we have a hand after we have stand. So there's that. And then Attendant of Asmodeus. A lot of additions in the format right now, especially order decks. This is really, really fun to use against them and generate some value. In response to a Red Wine and Bread trigger from casting it, you force them to sack the red wine, so then they don't even get the trigger off of it. And then you draw a card off of Astema. There's just a lot of value here. Deals with moons, deals with dark suns. There's a lot of additions in the format, and this is nice to be able to mess with them. So that is the list. It is a complicated deck to pilot. It doesn't feel when you first look at it, it feels a little wonky just because of how many of the discard effects you do. I hope the feature match kind of showed a little bit of how it's supposed to play. I will say this deck gets insanely complicated when it comes to Stan. The things you can do with the Stan play line, and keep in mind that removing Stan also removes the once per turn part from Carlina, and that opens up a lot of different play lines when you need to try to close out games. So that is the list. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This is a blast to play. It's, like I said, complicated, but rewards high skill and knowing the meta in a way that I haven't had from a deck in a while, which is really awesome. It feels like if I was to try to take the essence of what Hungrybox was trying to do in terms of the game feel and the call and response that felt, and bring it into something a little bit less utilitarian, because I don't have things like Drow or anything crazy, that it feels close. So I've really been enjoying it, and I hope you guys do too. Let me know in the comment sections down below what other ideas you would have for Fallen Angel Rulers in this new format. And until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.